Welcome everyone back to another episode of Absolutely Fabulous. It's episode 26. Today we're talking about access denied for South Australian grain producers facing trouble with the bank.
Yeah, it's not great. Being a South Australian, not a grain farmer per se, but it is a bit of a worry. And we're also going to be talking about when should kids on farms learn how to drive, which is some people have very strong views about this. So yeah, definitely one for the comments for sure. And we've got some questions as well coming up.
Yeah, we have questions coming up, including why does the government make it so hard for rural and remote Australians? A tampon replacing glue? Gillian to fill us in on that one. And the Jen McCutcheon fundraiser coming up and how you can get involved.
We've also got another couple of topics. A man dies after colliding with a tractor on a public road. So we'll be talking about how to move your machinery safely and what to do if you're in a car and there's big machinery around.
And we're finishing up with another anonymous question about farming and the cost of living. When should the farm pay for what you need? We've covered this several times, but this is a more poignant question, so we'll get back into it.
Let's get into it. Hi, welcome to Absolutely Fabulous. My name is Gillian Fennell, also known as Station Mum 101. I love everything about agriculture, especially the people and especially communicating about what makes Australian ag so special.
And I'm Katja Williams, a beef, cattle and cropping farmer, and I love all things ag, and I'm also known as the ultimate farm wife. Together, we are Absolutely Fabulous, and we are talking all things agriculture beyond the headlines.
And we can't wait to give our opinion to you, and we hope you enjoy it.
So let's get into today's episode. Gillian, let's start with some chit chat. What have you been up to this week?
I haven't been up to hardly anything at all, to be honest, because I've just been school holidays started on Friday. So we've only had like the weekend so far because today's only Tuesday. But yeah, just been hanging out at home, getting ready for mustering. So where, Mark's out repairing motorbikes, I'm washing bedding madly so everyone has a clean place to sleep, because we do have an army of cats here that have moved into the house and are sleeping on everything they can find. It's been working with the new horse. I'm going to have some fun and games there. She's a bit of a spicy one. So building up the courage to actually get on her. So if I turn up like in a neck brace or something, you'll know what's happened to me. But yeah, we've been pretty quiet here. What have you been up to, Katja?
Last week we had our big national show and sale for the Shorthorns. It was a good stable year this year, no groundbreaking records, as we can tell from, as you would expect from the Queensland floods and the South Australian drought that knocks out two big markets that usually feed the sale. But there is still a little bit of confidence around, which is really nice heading into winter. So some people still have quite a lot of feed, which is also a big factor of leading into these sales. And it was an unusual year. We only took one bull this year. Usually we would have an entire row. So usually we would take, upwards of 10 or 12 bulls. We found it quite different to our usual stress levels going into it and coming out the other side. But we did sell our bull, who was...
You better mention him.
So Poledale Uneven. So he sold for 12 grand.
That's a pretty good average sale price, actually, because, you see a lot of other breeds, and I guess probably what you'd call the more popular breeds, Angus, Hereford, those sorts of things. When they get clearances, they're looking at an average sale price of around 5 or 6. So average sale price of 12, that's really good. You should be really proud of yourselves for that. I'm sure he was a good bull, especially if we take his hide off and compare him to a Charolais.
Well, you would appreciate he did come third in his class in the judging, which is the day before the auction. And the judge this year was a Charolais breeder. So.
Oh, well, there you go. See, good animal's good animal.
Yeah. Good animal, yes, absolutely. So let's jump into our first topic. So you might have a little bit more insight into this one than I do, sitting over here in New South Wales. So South Australia grain producers face trouble at the bank.
Yeah, so this is a big problem because some grain producers in South Australia are going into their 4th year of drought conditions. Like you could dance around it and call it, subnormal rainfall level, but it is drought. And it is a challenge because a lot of grain farmers will know, if you're a cropper, you've got to roll the dice every year. You sow, and in South Australia, a lot of them dry sow and wait for the autumn break. And that hasn't happened this year. No one's had a break in any meaningful way. And so now we're looking at producers who just need carry-on finance. So they need money to be able to pay their living expenses, to pay their rates, all these sorts of things. And the banks, being banks, are a bit nervous that these people are already carrying a significant amount of debt, because that's what farming is. You carry a large debt because you're asset rich and cash poor, and you need the bank's cash to pay for seed and fuel and the machinery and all that sort of stuff. And so they are reluctant to extend any more credit to these producers, which is why one of the things that Grains Producers SA and my organisation, Livestock SA, because in South Australia, a lot of us grains producers and livestock producers are calling for, from the government, low or no interest loans. We don't want a handout for these producers so they can carry on and wait for the spring rain, because a lot of them have dried sowed. And, if they don't get that follow-up spring rain, they will have nothing. But if they do get the spring rain, cropping is a bit like gambling. You might win big, depending on what's happening in the global markets. So that is a concern, and it is also a concern that we've made this ask to state, and it's not really the state government's department, it's federal. We said very clearly to the federal government that this is what is required, and so far crickets. And I know there's been a lot of other stuff going on. We've got old mate over in the US bombing people he probably shouldn't have been bombing, and carrying on with all those sorts of shenanigans. And not saying we're the most important thing in the world, but if you don't have a thriving agricultural sector, then the small towns and the regions around you do tend to fall apart, because if they don't pay their bills, small businesses go out of business. So, yeah, that's all we're asking for. So if you've had trouble getting money from the bank because of you're in drought, please reach out and let us know, and we'll add that to our little dossier of data and information that we can pass on to decision makers.
Yeah, absolutely. It gets to one of these, when we've talked about when we've talked about climate change and natural disasters previously on the podcast, it's one of those things where I can't believe that we've had a government running since Federation. Yes, we've had a change in parties and everything like that, but this is patterns that occur regularly and are increasing, as part of their climate control, as part of their climate change policies and things like that. Why are these not okay? If this happens in our economy, if this happens to our local businesses, if this comes to our agricultural sector or any of the other sectors, it should be across the board. When it gets to this, we enact these plans, we enact this funding and budget for that, because it's going to happen. It's coming up. With the New South Wales drought, our drought in this area for the 2019 drought, people refer it to, some people use different years, but basically we didn't get rain here for 5 years. The similar pattern is happening now in South Australia. So why is the policy that was the same for New South Wales not being, I understand different states have different rulings and things like that and different budget, but why is there not legislation that has the same protocol effect? Okay, you should be able to run your agricultural business for a certain size up to this many years before financial help and assistance. Right, now we enact the free loans. Not the free loans. Now we, you know what I mean? I'm going on a rant.
Yeah.
Now we enact this.
I understand exactly what you're saying. And part of the problem, I guess the problem is what we operate under the National Drought Agreement, right? So all the states got together and they sat down around the table and they said, right, so under the National Drought Agreement, this is what we will agree we will and won't do when there's a drought, because drought is not classed as a natural disaster. And I think the issue with that is that 2 years of no rain, limited rain, whatever you want to call it, any business who's doing like moderately well should be able to withstand that, because it's not a new thing. You should be able to manage and plan and work your way through it. 2 years is fine. I think when you're looking at your third and your fourth year, then it does become considerably more abnormal. Like, you would not expect any other business to be able to function, past 4 years. And so, and people will say, oh, we'll just sell up then. But that doesn't really solve the problem, because then someone else is going to buy that land, be it a corporate, be it another farmer, whatever, and they're still going to go through the same cycle. And all this time, land prices are climbing, and so then other investors buy that land and they do other things with it. So our capacity to produce food falls, prices go up for food. It is in the nation's best interest to have a robust agricultural sector for the good we do overseas, because we feed a lot of people overseas, for the good we do in being productive and proactive land managers and maintaining that biodiversity and managing feral animals, because we do that off our own bat. We don't get paid for any of that. We look after a majority of the land mass of Australia. It's in the nation's best interest. It's the cheapest possible way to manage that land, is to keep us in business. And like I just said before, we're not looking for a handout. There needs to be a mechanism. People say, what about the RIC? What about the RIC, the Regional Investment Corporation? Their interest rates are on par with commercial lenders, and you can only get half of your loan from them. You have to get the other half from a commercial lender. So if you're already in the situation where a commercial lender won't look at you, the RIC's not really going to help. And so there needs to be these mechanisms that helps keep agriculture stable. It's no different to, seeing all the pharmacies go out of business, or seeing all the plumbers go out of business. It'd be a catastrophe. So we have to keep primary production in business, because they support local communities, they support regional areas, they do a lot of good outside of just producing food. And that's the same for any large industry that employs a lot of people in regional areas. They have to be, sustainable. And sometimes you need a hand up, not a handout.
So with that, we'll head into topic number 2. So the AgFabs have been sent in a reel this week. It is an American example, but I think the sentiment and the question is the same. At what age should farm kids learn to drive on their own private property and under supervision?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one, because it's often restricted by what size vehicles you have available. We've got a little petrol Suzuki where the kids can reach the pedals and that sort of thing, and see over the steering wheel at the same time. It doesn't go very well. It doesn't go very frequently. So that's you could probably learn to drive a lot easier in that than you can in, say, a Toyota, because even I struggle when in a Toyota like Land Cruiser Trayback to see over the bonnet, because I'm not that tall. And so and then if you put a kid in there, then if they're sitting on your lap, or they're sitting on a phone book or whatever you want to sit them on, then they can't reach the pedals, which is fine if they're just learning to steer, but they also need to learn to change gears. So they can't reach the clutch or the brake, which is a bit of a concern. You could put them in low range. Like, this is what you put your kids in low range and you take them up the airstrip where it's a big open flat space with not much for them to run into, and they can just sort of steer up and down there. They can't go very fast. But yeah, it is an interesting thing, because once kids get that little bit of independence about I can drive this thing, then you might come out one day and they might be marleying around the front yard, in a high-powered motor vehicle and causing all sorts of mischief. So have your kids starting to learn to drive, Katja? Because your kids are a lot younger than mine, obviously.
Yeah, so they're all interested in steering, then don't really have the concentration to do anything more than that at the moment. So for those who haven't been around for a while, my kids are 5, 4, 2 and 6 months. So the 5, 4 and 2-year-old like to steer on the straight and narrow around the farm, but they are not at the point where they have the concentration and the awareness to be able to operate anything by themselves. But we also have the ruling, even if we're taking it back to motorbikes, the rule is that they need to be able to ride their bicycle without training wheels and be perceptive first, then they can move up into a motorbike. Most likely they will probably either start on a little peewee, or they now have electric bikes, which is like the next step before you put them on the peewee. Now, which is really good because they don't go fast and they're not high powered, but they still move over the terrain quite nicely. So they'll probably go maybe into an electric bike situation first. because of that speed, because you can wind it back, but then you've got the tiny Suzukis and work your way up from that. When it comes to a car or machinery, I've previously spoken to other wives on the Ultimate Farm Wife platform about, when that is, and that's realistically assessing not age, but your child's ability. What's their ability to notice what's going around? Ask them the questions when you're driving along. Explain to me what you see, explain to me what's coming up. Okay, we're coming up to a corner. Tell me, do we need to slow down? Do we need to speed up? Tell me some of the hazards you see. And once your kids start to get quite good at that, then popping them into steering and then popping them into control of a vehicle, comes with their ability, because we know everybody grows up mentally at a different age, physically at a different age, but definitely if they can touch the pedals, if they can steer, if it's a safe enough environment for them, if it's under supervision, I don't see too much of an issue as long as your child is prepared. Again, private property under supervision.
Yeah, don't take them out on the roads or highways or anywhere where they're likely to encounter the members of the public, because that's not fair on them. It's illegal for a start. It's also not fair on the members of the public to have to encounter a child driving a motor vehicle. So don't do that. But again, I think you're right. It's when the kid is ready for it, and you're right. A lot of kids do like to just sit up on mum and dad's lap and steer. And staying on the road is a skill. I think it's one of those things that we forget it, because we've done it for so long and it's just sort of muscle memory now. But when you're just learning to do that, being able to steer a motor vehicle straight down a road, it's something that you have to really focus on and learn. And there's a limit to how much capacity like a child's brain has to do all these different things. So focus on steering, changing gears, being aware, looking in your mirrors, checking forwards, round, behind you, slowing down for corners, all that sorts of things. And that supervision is crucial. Our kids learnt to do a lot of driving when we're walking cattle. So we'd have the adults would be on bikes, and they'd be in low range, in behind the mob of cattle, just going straight down the road. They were forbidden to leave the road because otherwise they'd get a flat tire. And, checking on them all the time. And it keeps them relatively safe because they can't go fast because there's a giant mob of cattle ahead of them. You've got people on bikes, adults checking them left, right and centre. And they're part of the crew. So it's, again, there's no easy answers for this one, but I think the earlier you familiarise kids with how to operate a motor vehicle safely, the better chance you will have. Because I know when my eldest went to get his licence, he didn't have to learn to drive a car because he already knew how to drive a car. So all he had to focus on learning was the road rules, which put him far ahead of his urban counterparts. He only had to have 2 lessons before he could pass his license, and that's the legal minimum requirement. If you can familiarize them with how to operate a motor vehicle safely, then explain to them, this is a gear stick, this is the brake, the clutch, the accelerator, this is your blinker. Teach them to use a blinker, definitely. Some people struggle with that one, but it's up to you. It's your kids, your land, your car. Just make sure everyone's safe.
And use the safety equipment that you have. So if they are learning to ride a bike, make sure they've got their helmet on, make sure they're wearing their seatbelt if they're in a side-by-side or vehicle. I do think it's up to you. I mean, some of the, New South Wales Safe Work or something like that might be listening to this podcast and they might be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that's the recommendation, but on all machinery, whether it's a vehicle or a bike, there are safety precautions that they do put in place. They do have age recommendations, not recommendations, but what they say you should be using. So I think a quad bike, you can't be, is it 16? You supposed to be 16 before you use a quad bike. But if you're using a smaller kid's quad bike, the age will decrease on that. And that's based on the power.
Yeah. And just quad bikes, be very, very careful with them because they're not as safe as you think they are. They are. I don't think that they're safe at all, but you do you.
Yeah, two-wheelers are definitely safer, which is interesting because most people think that's the opposite.
Yeah, can't go as fast on a two-wheeler because you start to get really frightened when you go really fast. Well, four-wheeler not so much, and that's when you flip over and do yourself some serious damage. But anyway, it's up, you make sure you look after your family the best way that you think. All right, questions and answers, Katja. why does the government make it so hard for rural and remote people? I don't know if this is deliberate or just garden variety uselessness, to be completely honest. I think there's no votes out here. So, yeah, why bother? Because it doesn't matter what they do. It's not going to change their position of power or anything that they do anyway. I think that's basically the crux of it. I think it's just that we don't matter because there's not enough of us to matter.
I think it also becomes to, part of that saying, which we are definitely going to get a shirt of yours, Gillian, if you do not participate.
Then, you're right to complain.
Absolutely.
And that is very true, because a lot of us don't participate because, after decades of being it's demonstrated to us that what we say and do doesn't matter, then you just get very tired. But I think in these modern times, we do have the capacity to have more of a say. We do have the capacity to raise awareness. When you look at, for example, the animal activist type people, there's not very many of them, yet they manage to raise a lot of funds and generate political will to change legislation and ban industries and those sorts of things. So I think we need to start being a little bit more like them, which is it's many of us find objectionable because they don't let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what gets them the donations, and that's what gets them the votes. And I think we are sort of morally object to that sort of premise. Most of us are anyway, I think, because we're like, well, we should just tell the truth and then people will believe us and take us seriously. But it's not heart-wrenching enough. It's, yeah.
When our representative bodies are sending out surveys, jump on their email list. It'll get sent directly to your email. Check your email and fill out the surveys. Most of the surveys will take 5 to 10 minutes to complete, and that is a way that you can have your voice. It is a way that we can start to be heard, and these bodies are there to represent us, but they need the survey numbers to be able to bring that forward into policy making and to be heard. So while we might say, oh, we're out here, we're all alone, we're isolated, we do have a say. We need to start having our say again. I know there's definitely been that lack of confidence, and that lack of confidence comes with the, well, why should I bother? But it is so important to have a say.
And it's an important thing when you're advocating for anything. No stories without data, and no data without stories. So if you want to tell a sad story about how far you have to drive to get to childcare or medical assistance or anything like that, you got to record the kilometres, how much it costs you, how many hours it takes you, because that people have zero comprehension of where we live and what we do. We need to demonstrate it. Show them a picture on the map of this is how far I must drive to be able to get an X-ray if one of my kids falls off the monkey bars in the backyard and breaks their arm. This is where my closest supermarket is. This is where my closest fuel station is. This is, we need to be able to prove to people, because a lot of people are very skeptical of what we say and do because they just, and it's not, I don't think it's through malice, it's just because they have zero comprehension. They cannot conceive the size and the scale of Australia, especially when you get into regional areas. So yeah, no data without stories and no stories without data.
Yeah. If it doesn't impact somebody else's life on a daily or even weekly basis, it's out of sight, out of mind. They don't see that it impacts their life, so they don't put a second thought to it. And that's why it is so important to be able to share that and to keep that data as well, because they're not doing it out of malice, they're just doing it out of uneducation, but it's education they don't know that they need or that is not relevant to them, so they might not actually need it at all.
And also they have their own issues to deal with, and the cost of living is a massive issue that everyone across Australia is facing. And it's really hard to get empathy from people who are working 2 or 3 jobs just to keep their head above water, because then they look at us, rightly or wrongly, and say, oh, well, look at you in your brand new Toyota Land Cruiser wagon, $100,000 motor car, with your big lot of land. It's very, very hard for them to have empathy for us because they don't understand that, we need that motor vehicle because we need to be safe, because we have to drive 500 kilometres to get to the shops. They don't, because they've got their own stuff to deal with. So we've got to really try and make those connections and cut through, because unless urban Australia, and we say this all the time, unless urban Australia gets on board with supporting regional Australia, we'll never get any change. So we need to be a bit more open and more supportive of the struggles of other Australians, not just be all poor farmer me all the time. Right, what's our next question? Oh, that's
so Gillian, you sent me a very strange Instagram message, and it took me a little while to work out what it was. But we're going to be talking about tampon replacing glue. Is that what it is?
Well, I'm bamboozled and disturbed, to be completely honest, because this came up in my Instagram feed. I was just scrolling through reels last night, just while I was watching TV at the same time, as we all do. And it's the back of a lady's hand, and this caption comes across, and I will find it and I will put it on our socials, comes across like, you don't need tampons anymore. And she puts this glue on the back of her hand and shows with her finger how sticky it is, and then she sticks a piece of fabric to it, and it's like, oh, look, so sticky, can't pull the fabric off. And then she gets a cotton bud dipped in soapy water and like takes it off. So I'm assuming that their plan is that instead of using traditional feminine hygiene products, that you just sort of glue your flaps together when it's your time of the month.
Okay.
And
not where I thought I was going.
That is so very, I just got no words, because a lady didn't invent that. Anyone who's ever had a menstrual cycle did not invent that. And even if a lady did invent that glue, she never thought, you know what, this is going to be a really good thing to do, because it is.
Okay, that's not where I thought that was going. I thought that maybe they were using that glue to go back to absorbent material, so sticking the absorbent
old-fashioned modest belts.
Yeah, like sticking it in your undies and then putting that.
No, I think because it's to glue your skin together. I think it's to like seal it up.
No, that's not how it works. That's not safe.
No, it's not.
That's not hygienic.
No.
There are other ways, everybody. There are other ways.
I know in recent years there's been like, I wouldn't call them new developments, because over the many millennia, because obviously this is a thing that women have to deal with, there's been many different types of feminine hygiene products, and now becoming more mainstream. We've got cups and we've got all these other sorts of things which you may use. It's whatever it suits you. But I don't think anyone in their right mind has ever said, you know what, we'll just seal it up for the week or 10 days or however long your cycle lasts. Like, I don't know, are you meant to like seal it up for a day and then like have a rinse off at night? And like, no, because it's got to leave the body. You can't leave it in there, because that's not how it works. That's really bad.
Toxic shock.
Yeah, it's not. So yeah, but I'll put the reel up. If I can find it and download it, I will put it up and let us know what you think they're aiming at. Because, Katja, you could be right. They could be like, oh, instead of like, because if we have any like really old listeners, I used to work in an old haberdashery store, and we had these things that I didn't know what they were, and the ladies said, oh, well, that's a modest belt. So back in the day, before we had like sticky backed pads and those sorts of things, you had a little elastic belt that you wore around your waist, and with clips, and you clipped a bit of fabric, you know, where your pad would go, and then you put your knickers on over the top. And so like maybe they're thinking like it's like a new fashion modest belt where you just sort of glue it onto your underparts, because there is a movement out there that makes washable, reusable pads. They also make washable, reusable toilet paper, which is something I just cannot get around. Like, I will see the environment burn before I'm washing and reusing toilet paper that I used to wipe my bum with. Sorry.
But also water. Are we not concerned about our water use and how much that, you know, for those who are on water restrictions and who are in drought, they can't do that?
But yeah, it's a very unusual thing. And I'm 100% certain that a woman did not come up with that plan, because that is no. We need to do, I will find a doctor and I will ask their medical opinion on this and see what they say, and I'll put that up as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Okay, moving on to safer topics. I'll try to do this without crying.
Yep.
So one of the Ultimate Farm Wife community members went through something in February that is absolutely heartbreaking. They started their next chapter of life without their farmer. Their farmer died back in February. They laid them to rest, leaving behind his wife and 2 girls. So as part of the fundraiser for the girls, for their education, their living, so they can stay on farm in their home, in their community, there is a fundraiser for those girls that is going on. I will put a link in the show notes. We will share it on our socials as well. There is a raffle, an auction, and an event that is coming up. Okay, so the Daughters fundraiser is Saturday, the 19th of July, 2025, from 2 p.m. at the Colai Hotel, which is on the Oxley Highway. So for those who are uncertain where that is northwest of Dubbo, New South Wales. Join us as a community raffle and auction to help raise funds for Evie and Annie, kicking off at 2 p.m. The leading major raffle prize is a Polaris RZR 200 buggy, retailing at over $8,999. If you would like to buy a raffle ticket, please go through to the link and help out where you can, because we would all love to stay on our farms in our communities when devastation like this strikes. Jen and family, our thoughts and love are with you.
I think this is probably, if not the worst nightmare, it's like one of our worst as being women in agriculture on a farm, when you have a partner and a family. The sudden loss of that person is obviously, it's a tragic, life-changing event wherever you live and work.
Yeah.
But often it's so much part of your identity as well that I think we can all empathise with this. And if you can support Jen and her girls, we encourage you to do so, because they're for the grace of God go I. We work in a very high-risk environment.
Mm-hmm.
And we've all had those moments, and we're lying if we don't. We've all had those moments when the radio's gone silent, when they're overdue, when it's dark and they haven't made it home. And we know what it's like. So if you can support Jen, please do. And it's for the girls. It's, let's keep the girls in their home. Let's give them the opportunity to grow up in the life that their dad wanted for them.
Moving into another hard topic before we finish on hopefully a lighter topic. We'll see how we go. We got sent through a Land article which was covering a man dies after colliding with a tractor on a public road. Now, I've pulled that up as well as some road rules. Okay, for those who haven't seen the article, the summary is a 40-year-old man dies in a collision involving a Toyota Kluger and a tractor near Temora. So this was on Thursday, the 19th of June, 2025 at approximately 3:20. Despite the New South Wales ambulance paramedics, he was pronounced dead at the scene. The 28-year-old tractor driver escaped uninjured and was taken to Temora Hospital for mandatory testing. So the question that came along with this is, when overtaking a tractor on public roads in Australia, many people, particularly our urban counterparts, don't understand the rules around this. I don't believe it's covered in the L's or P test. Do you know that, Gillian? Because you've just had some kids go through your driver's license testing. Is that included?
I don't know that, to be honest. I do know in South Australia we have significant rules around moving large machinery on road because of the nature of our regional areas involve a lot of agriculture. And, you have to have above a certain size and those sorts of things, because it's not just agricultural machinery. You've got graders and loaders and backhoes and all those sorts of things that need to be shifted around, earth moving equipment. And you are allowed to walk them on the road because you can register them. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of rules around. You have to have flashing lights, you have to have your correct signage, and it's massive, massive fines if you don't adhere to that. I think it's a lack of familiarity is what comes down to why cars and machinery don't interact very well. Even though machinery can be registered and those sorts of things, it doesn't have the same sort of peripheral vision that a motor vehicle does, so they may be unaware. Because, if you're in the city and you're in a car, often you'll pull up behind a truck and it say in it'll have a sticker, if you can't see my mirrors, I can't see you. Yeah. Simply because the size of that machinery. If you can't see that vehicle's mirrors, they have no concept you're there. The number of times that, and also cars don't understand that a big, heavy machine takes a lot longer to stop and to accelerate because of the size that it is. And so my advice to you, if you are not familiar with heavy machinery and you encounter some on the road, stay well back. Make sure the road is very clear before you overtake. Keep your headlights on while you're driving, because often the only thing that will let you know if you're in a big machine that there's a car behind you is the headlights will flash in your mirrors, and then you'll be able to notice. Because also you can't rely on your sense of sound because they're noisy. They're a lot more noisy than a motor vehicle. You've got the road noise from the big tires, etc., etc. And I think road rules aside, they are much bigger than you and much heavier. If you hit them or they hit you, you're the one who's probably going to die. Yep. So just be very, very careful. Don't say, oh, well, he's not obeying the road rules, so I'm going to do whatever. Bad move, because they are so big and heavy that, yeah, it's not going to be great. So just be very careful around tractors and machinery and anything that's bigger than you, trucks, buses, be very careful.
I'm just checking my notes to make sure. I think you covered everything that I had.
Yeah, it's also a thing in cities. Like, I drive a Prado, it's a pretty big motor vehicle, so I like to leave a fair amount of space between myself and the next vehicle when I pull up to traffic lights and those sorts of things, because I never know what's going to be happening around me. I like to leave plenty of space. The number of very small bubble cars, like little tiny town cars, that zip up around me and then come into that little space just as we're pulling up to the lights, like, that space is not for you. That space is because I've got a massive big motor vehicle with a very big bull bar that takes a lot longer to stop than a little tiny town car. That is for everyone else's safety. That space is not for you to jump around me at the lights. Like, so I'm begging people to just be more aware of the size and scale of the other things that are on the road. And, we've got trams in Adelaide, terrify me. I will do anything at all possible to avoid driving the same vicinity as a tram, because they're big, they're slow to stop, they're on a track, they can't move, like, they can't swerve out of the way. If you're in their way, they're going to hit you, and they're a lot bigger than me. Like, so just be more aware of what's going on around you.
So just a reminder for those who are unaware, tractors are allowed on public roads, even though they are slower. There are penalties that are in place for if you are caught overtaking unsafely. So you can be fined hundreds of dollars, lose demerit points, and also be charged with dangerous driving if you are not considering your safety, their safety, and everybody else's safety in overtaking one of these machines or any other heavy vehicle on the road.
Oh, and you might also see driving down the road occasionally a sprayer, right?
Yeah.
So sprayers are really tall with really big wheels. And it looks like, don't let the intrusive thoughts win, it looks like you could drive right underneath them.
Oh,
don't try that.
Don't do that.
That's a very bad idea. You might think, you know what, I'm in my little sports car, I'll just zip through that. Do not do that. Like, it might seem like now is the time for me to pull off a movie stunt and I'm going to drive underneath this sprayer going 20 kilometers an hour down the road. Don't let your intrusive thoughts win. Do not drive underneath the sprayer. That is a terrible idea.
Absolutely terrible. And do not overtake over double lines, even if you think you have time and space. The double lines are there for a reason. And if you have to merge back into traffic really quickly, they're big and you're not going to be able to.
You'll run into a really big tyre and that will be the end of you and your little. So be safe, and be safe for your family's sake.
Heading into our next topic, finishing with an anonymous question about farming and the cost of living. So Gillian and I have covered on many occasions on this podcast that you need to set safe financial boundaries, because if you are not setting financial boundaries for yourself on farm, the farm business, like any other business, will take your finances, will take your time, will take until you have nothing left. So the question that we've been sent in is, I have 2 kids and I've been asking for a family car and my partner keeps saying no. However, he has no trouble buying, sorry, I should have pre-read this.
He has no trouble buying shit for the farm.
Yeah. They have bought a new tractor, a new truck and a forklift, totaling over $1,500K, and it's unsafe for her. Basically, the gist of it is it's unsafe for her and her kids to be in the car that they have, and they are just wanting a bigger family car that is safer. And they're also paying their own private health insurance, internet, grocery costs, and they have an Airbnb income, which is what is paying for that.
This sounds very familiar, except I don't have an Airbnb for any off-farm income.
I think we need to talk about boundaries again because these questions keep coming in, and it is definitely easier said than done when setting these boundaries. But you will find your place, not just this person who has answered this question. There are many, many people in the same situation or who have been in the same situation as you. And the hard thing is saying no to the farm, but also it sounds like you need to have a really good conversation with your partner about your expenses. What is covered? I mean, health insurance should be something that is covered by the farm if you have moved there, if you are contributing, and if you have no other income or job because you've moved to the farm. They should be keeping your life insurance going. They should be paying a contribution towards your groceries or even just setting a budget so that you know what you need to be able to do. They can do that as part of their family farming business.
And again, it comes down to the fact, like to the other question is, are they being paid like a proper wage, or are they on a draws from the family farming business scenario? And there's arguments for and against, and that's a financial decision that you have to make in just with the accountant and your solicitors and all those sorts of things to make sure everyone's getting the best deal. And again, we know how challenging it is. You're young, you're in love, you're going to go and live the dream. You're going to live on the farm. It's going to be sunshine and roses and baby lambs and crops full of canola. You can stroll through. It's going to be beautiful. And then reality comes and bites you in the ass, and you find out that you're not being paid properly because one day this will all be yours. You are given no allowances or budgets for home improvement or repairs even. Everything is a fight, is a drama. So, the best time to have had this conversation was before marriage. The second best time to have it is now. You need to get your partner on board. He needs to understand how and why you feel that way and what issues are, because if he doesn't understand, if he doesn't see a problem, and this is no slur against men, a lot of men do not see the drama because it's never their concern, because, oh, well, that's house stuff. Mum's always dealt with that, so now you'll just deal with that. And mums and wives are very, very good at shielding their children from these sorts of things because we just want them to have a happy, healthy life. So we don't, get into the intricacies of the drama of why, our cupboards have no doors and those sorts of things. So, we're just like, oh, well, it's a drought. We can't afford it, these sorts of things. So he needs to get on board with why it's a problem. And he at least needs to understand that he needs to be your advocate. I don't know, like every family is different. Some families be like, oh my God, I didn't realize. Let's deal with it and fix it straight away. Because a lot of people, they do get their heads down in their business and they're just trying to make a dollar. Some people are like, oh, well, I lived like that, so you can live like that too. Some people are like, well, I lived like that, and oh my God, I didn't believe I was making the same mistakes all over again. Write down a list of everything that's bothering or bugging you. Get your own independent advice. We love Carmen Wade. Carmen is superstar. Reach out to her, pay her, of course, because, shouldn't be asking people to do stuff for nothing, but she can at least point you in the right direction. You need to be proactive. And also, I know exactly, because we had a Hilux dual cab up until my third child. And I spat the absolute dummy because it was also our work car and I was sick to death. The porta cot was always covered in diesel and hay. The pram was covered in diesel and hay. Everything was covered in dust because we didn't have a canopy, because it was also the work car. I'm like, this is it. The third kid, I am not. We are buying a decent secondhand, and we managed to pick up a really good secondhand car. Sometimes the foot's just got to come down. You got to help. And a mental load. You've got to help him, make him see, like, I know it shouldn't be our problem, but unfortunately it is. Make him see that, this is a drama.
Absolutely. So I sat down with one of the Ultimate Farm Wives behind the scenes who was having a similar trouble. And what we did was we wrote down not just what you need to spend or what you need to cover your expenses and the kids' expenses, not just in a month, but over a 6-month, 12-month period. You should have the bank details to be able to go back and track that and look at it. because in a lot of cases, particularly now with house prices and everything as it is, people are staying with their parents longer. And if you've married your farmer and you've moved to the farm, they have, in a lot of cases, never lived outside mum and dad's arms. They've never lived outside the house. They've never experienced what it is to live independently from the farm. And they've grown up where their needs were kept very minimum, very low, and were covered by the farm. So you are an external person coming into this situation. And so they, exactly what Gillian said, they probably have no idea how much that it will cost. Particularly when they get to childcare age, if you need to put them into childcare or even into schooling. So you need to sit down. It is an uncomfortable conversation, but you need to sit down with them and show them, not just tell them, show them. Okay, in a 6 to 12 month period, this is what I have been paying to cover myself and the kids. And this is what we need to keep us safe and healthy and looked after, because it's not a burden you should be carrying by yourself. And once you share that, hopefully the aim is that they can have a discussion with their parents or set a budget aside for you and the kids that is going to increase with the kids' age. So I'm not sure how old your kids are, but as they get older, things will become more expensive for them, both in schooling as well as extracurricular activities if they're wanting to do a sport, or they need tutoring, or they need healthcare covered costs. Health insurance is great, but it only gets us so far. We still need to pay the gap. Particularly for a lot of situations, if your kids need glasses, you know, they will need to be covered.
Braces, glasses, all those sorts of things. And this is the interesting thing that I've encountered with some family farming enterprises. They say, I employ, the son works for us, and we don't pay him much because one day this will all be his.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, though, when he gets married and has a family, he is now responsible for that. So the farm isn't just employing him, they're employing the whole unit, because it's the gender stereotypes, but it's the wife's role to look after him so he can work 12 to 18 hours a day on the farm.
Mm-hmm.
If he didn't have that, then his mother would be doing it, and one day she's going to get sick of that. But they need to look after the entire unit. They can't just say, oh, we're just going to look after our boy and everyone else is just like whatever, because the very nature of what we do makes it challenging. Not saying it's impossible for some people, but it's challenging too. Have an off-farm job, have off-farm income, all these sorts of things. So the farm needs to account for looking after that unit. And you may well have a scenario where one day this is all yours, but you still need an employment agreement that says this is what we'll cover, this is your yearly budget, or, you know, and you'll get whatever. And in return, you're getting this much of the business, or, you know, and there's such challenging conversations that they need to be had, because I can tell you from very intimate experience that if you don't have them, you get 25 years down the track and you're like, God damn, I wish someone would have told me that 25 years ago.
Absolutely. And if they don't have an employee agreement or an agreement that works in for you and your family, keep a diary, keep all of this documented, because one day you might just need it. So keep all of these conversations documented, keep the track of your expenditure, keep track of the hours that your husband's putting into the farm, and keep track of your contributions. As Gillian said before, your contributions don't have to be down the paddock. Your contributions could just be the cooking, the cleaning. If someone can get paid for that job, then that is a role and responsibility that you are doing, and you are doing it unpaid. Document it, record those hours.
Just keep a diary, keep records. And this is like it, and if we're coming across like we're being very defensive and protective, then yes, that is one way to look at it. But also, if the farm is going to move ahead as a business, it needs to be able to properly account for its expenses. And, you know, look at it on the balance sheet and the profit and loss. This unit, this employee unit now of family, is an expense. Mm-hmm. So it needs to be able to properly account for that. And it can't account for that properly unless it knows what it costs and what the hours are and all of that sort of stuff. So you're helping the business, by keeping an accurate record of these things. And again, mental load, all this sort of shit that we shouldn't have to be responsible for, that should just be happening in a normal, ordinary situation. But as we know, family farms are not ordinary, everyday situations. They are very complex. They are full of personalities, and they can be very challenging within which to operate.
So Gillian and I have answered this question from a couple of different perspectives. The first one is for you, and the second is for your farm business, because depending on the personality types that are in your farm business, the language that we've changed interchangeably will help you communicate that message. If they are not caring necessarily for you personally or for your kids, change it back to a business sense. Make it more professional, less personal, and more about them and their farming business. And that may just be the tweak and change that you need in their brain to go, yes, actually, this is unacceptable that we aren't, they're never going to say this is unacceptable, we're not looking after you, but it may just start the cogs turning in a direction that's going to correctly support you and your children on farm.
So I hope that helps. I really, really do hope it helps you. Fingers crossed. And get him to allow you. This is going to sound so old-fashioned. Get your husband to allow you to buy a proper motor vehicle, because if I know anything, it's that a proper motor vehicle is an absolute necessity, especially if you're carting kids around. You have to be safe and you have to be secure.
In another scenario where I was talking with another ultimate farm wife, this is after our podcast episodes had gone live and we have a chat afterwards, or when I get contacted for some help or some advice. Sometimes you need to let the farm choose the vehicle, which is not a great position to also be in, but the end goal is that you've got something that's appropriate and they feel like they've had the say in the vehicle. So what you can do is say, I don't mind if you choose the vehicle, if you look for the vehicle, but what the kids and I need is a bull bar, spotlights, and seats that have, the childcare restraints if your kids are that age. So you're putting down just 3 little things about the car. They get to choose the budget, they get to choose the car, but it's got the 3 things that you need most to keep you and the kids safe.
And sometimes, especially when you're dealing with older people, they are unwilling to surrender any level of control, but you can put the control back in their hands of saying, I don't mind what you get me, provided it has, bull bar spotlights, an enclosed back, working air conditioning, and proper points for the child seats. That's all I care about. Don't care about anything else. And you might care a lot, but you just got to suck it up. More than one way is to skin a cat.
Put it back in their court.
Yeah.
Write it down, keep it documented, make it a business decision, and put it back in their court to see whether they will action it. And don't be afraid to remind them. Maybe not weekly, but definitely every fortnight or once a month, have a chat to your partner about that again.
I don't think we're going to become marriage counsellors anytime, Kutch.
No, I don't think so either. But thank you everyone for listening to another episode of Absolutely Fabulous. We love your questions. We love giving out free advice. We love giving you our opinion in agriculture beyond the headlines and closing the urban-rural divide. Please keep those questions coming in. You can contact Gillian on the socials or myself at the email address. For anything that we've mentioned today, check out either the show notes or over at the socials. Anything we've spoken about will be in one of those 2 places. Until next time, we'll see you all next week.
Bye.